I'm live, and I think my microphone is working. And there's even people here. Hallelujah. Hullabaloo. Hello, you guys, whoever's here. Nice to see you. Except I don't. Uh, Welcome. Let's have some fun. Let's talk about everything. Hold on a second. My phone just went on, and this is through my hearing aids. All right, I'm back. Um, let's see. So, what was it? Fomo-sapio-phobia was a term I came up with this week. Oh, someone just left. Um, Fomo-sapio-phobia, term I came up with this week. Uh, just in passing, it's not a big new idea, some breakthrough sort of a thing. It's something I'm playing with from personal experience. Hello, Roger. Let's go. Yes, ma'am. You are on my screen. It says you're my number one fan. That's easy when you're the only one here. Um, uh, anyway, nice to have you, Roger. And by the way, let's go with any of your questions or comments or critiques or observations. Observations are really the whole point here. I got lots of them because I've been at the observation making game for quite a while. But the whole point here is to cultivate your own observations. So if you've got any you want to run by me, and I'd love to hear them. Mine I hear all the time. Um, so anyway, I'm going to go back to this one. Fomo-sapio-phobia. Are you a psychologist? No, I am not a psychologist. Hey, Michael, really nice to see you. Let me explain what I am. It's very confusing what I am. I certainly work in psychology. For example, I've written 1,000 articles for Psychology Today. I just got back from a walk with my main research colleague, he was at Harvard as a neuroscientist when I met him, and he's been at UC Berkeley where he's a full professor. He's now emeritus. No, my PhD is in decision theory and evolutionary biology. Um, and I did that under the tutelage of this guy who's now been my best friend for years and years. But he was on my PhD committee. I didn't go to Harvard or to Berkeley for that. I have a master's in public policy from Berkeley. But no, I am not a clinical psychologist. And yet what I do, I offer a service that people pay me for in what I call psychostrategic consulting. So I'm not a clinical psychologist. I couldn't claim that. Um, it's something in between that kind of dig deeper into the bottomless pit of your history kind of psychotherapy, and you could say pep talk coaching. Um, and mostly I deal with people who are dealing with doubt or choices or tough judgment calls. One way that I do that is I sort of I listen to them carefully and represent to them who their future self is, so they can actually have a negotiating conversation with themselves between what they want now and what their future person might want. I had written a book years ago called Negotiate with Yourself and Win. And then a lot of my work is with people who are dealing somehow either with feeling like they're on the verge of being a-holes. That's rare, but I do get some of that. I got a new one that way yesterday. Or people who feel like they're having trouble figuring out how to deal with uh, uh, difficult people. You could call it absolutists is what a lot of my work is on. So no, the short answer is I'm not, and yet I am all over psychology, and I would argue that the approach I take is more rigorous than a lot of what passes for clinical psychologists. I'm a mentor collaborator. Yesterday, I had a conversation with a guy who asked me to be his godfather. He's 23 or something like that. We've known each other a long time. He just got his PhD in philosophy of science. We talk about all manner of things. I don't actually give a fuck what I am. That's the fun of this. At some point, the ideas take over. And in my case, because I'm 69 years old, I don't have anything left to prove. I have no status I need to earn. And so it's about connecting where the connecting is good. Let me give you another example. 2 nights ago, I had a 2-hour happy birthday conversation with a friend slash former client, a Hindu woman from India living in Dubai. I coached her for pay straight through the launching of her tax and legal consulting firm, which just won an award as the best newcomer in Dubai. What's my relationship with her? Well, she asked me to coach sometimes. She asked me to coach her kids sometimes. She pays me for it. But the call the other night was 2 hours just jamming, just two people thinking, just wondering what just her version of life, my version. But we both gained insights from it. She comes from this culture that believes in fate and destiny, and at the same time, there's fortune tellers even in her family. Like her mother was an intense astrologer, and yet here she is giving legal and tax consulting strategy. So we got into this whole thing about does strategy come from questioning or does it come from channeling the fates? And it's interesting to watch that, and she can watch with me. So no, I'm all over the map. I'll be whatever is useful and connecting where the connecting's good. All right. Okay. Um, let's see. Someone said something here like why we're afraid of spiders and snakes and stuff like that. Yes, I got deep into evolutionary psychology. That was my portal in, and it was actually for personal reasons. I was trying to understand uh, sexual jealousy, sexual rivalry, and I got interested in it that way, and then got into all of that stuff about how we have carryover traits from our evolutionary origins. And then I started to recognize that evolutionary psychology was an easy game to play. At first, I was impressed by how many theories it could generate, and then I realized, well, actually, there's a problem. If you can generate a theory for anything, basically, then you have a problem. How do you decide which theories are better? So I went from there to complexity theory, which was in its heyday back then. I'm going to try to reduce that light behind me because it. Oh, that didn't help. Oh, that's so weird. It's one screen, one thing. Never mind. Um, Went to complexity theory, and then through that met this guy named Terrence Deacon, who I've been working with ever since. And I think that he is doing something more grounded than evolutionary psychology and complexity theory. Though complexity theory can feel very grounded because it's grounded in math. But I would actually argue that math is not a good grounding, not for really understanding what's going on. To understand what's going on, you have to go physical. You have to understand how physical work changes, or what I'm calling these days metadynamics. So dynamics is change, and metadynamics would be how change changes. And change has changed a lot since the origins of the universe. And that's where Terry and I work. So Terry's first 20 years were working out the neuroscience of how we ended up with language. And he wrote a book called The Symbolic Species, which, as I've said many times, I cried when I first read it because it was over my head. That relates to the thing I started with, which was Fomo-sapio-phobia, fear of missing out on being smart. um, no, I cried because it was over my head, and then I ended up meeting them and him, and then we ended up jamming for all of these years, and he's like me. So you're like a mentor? You could ask of Terry, and he'd say, I don't know. I'm kind of over the question of what I am. With me from the start, yes, it was important mentoring from my perspective, but he never talked to me like he was tutoring me. He talked to me like he was talking, like I want to do here, just talking. We're people. It's like it's like sitting on a porch of the universe and wondering about the whole ball of wax and us in it. That's what I'm doing here. So that's what I am. Okay, let's see. Psychology is the underpinning of a lot of things people don't realize. Yes. By the way, I taught psychology. I taught college level psychology. This happens in academics. With some schools, they allow for a smear. For example, I have a woman friend who was a noted primatologist, and last time I talked to her, she was teaching in the psych department. Yeah, once you're in the social sciences, it's kind of a blur. But to your point, um, Michael, No, to your point, Reverend Walt, and by the way, how you do, sir. Um, when I taught psychology on the first day of class, the first thing I said to them was, "Okay, how many of you are getting a degree in psychology?" And I said they all were. They would raise their hands, very few. Actually, this was in an art school, where everybody was studying digital arts. It was a podunk school, and once again, I didn't care where I was so long as I got to think through the ideas I did, and it was a wonderful school to teach at. Got lots of friends from there, from the former students and all of that, lifelong friends from that conversation. But no, none of them were studying psychology, and yet everybody is. And I would also say that's one of the problems with my line of work that would also be a problem if I was a clinical psychologist. Look, if I was a geophysicist and I showed up at a party and some geophysical question would come up, um, they might look to me. They might say, okay, well, you're a geophysicist. What do you got to say about that? If you're a psychologist, it's not like that at all. If you work in the social sciences, everybody's a fucking psychologist. What do you get some special credit because you went to school to study it? No, that's one of the problems with this field. And not only that, I defer to that. I I I had to say to a friend this week, yeah, oh, I had to say it to a rocket scientist. I'm talking to a guy who's a specialist in fluid dynamics. He designs software for all that. A And I said, psychology is not rocket science. It's way harder. So I'm more okay with lay people talking like they're psychologists than I am with psychologists talking like they're experts. I don't think you can be an expert in psychology. I'm not an expert on assholes. I don't think you can be one. I think it's impossible. And besides, these would be really early days to make such a claim. I mean, it's ridiculous how bad we are at it and how we go at it. And I am not, I am not satisfied with how we do psychology these days. Me included. I even put out a video this week about that. For example, how we deal with Trumpists. I'm not satisfied with any of my answers, even though I've got lots of them. I've generated lots of answers. I keep on generating them, but no, I'm not satisfied with them. They're clearly not working. so, um, so no, there are no experts in this line of work. Um, I just try to be more careful and more thoughtful. And Roger Shoemaker, know thyself, is one of the big challenges I'm dealing with here. I don't think we want to. And besides, when that was first stated in Greece, it actually mostly meant know thy station, know where society has placed you. Yes, Socrates took it in some directions, but um, then, I mean, I just recently reread Plato's Republic. By the way, we don't know Socrates. We only know Socrates through Plato. And Plato is talking about how you got to keep people from knowing themselves, the noble lie. He's basically making an argument in the Republic that for the kind of government we're getting here in the United States, but um, he somehow assumes you could have a leader like Trump who was devoid of egotistical issues. Okay, so I want to come back to this thing about know thyself. It's really hard to want to. Um, uh, I do like that one, Roger. That's fine with me. That one good. The thing about on the roll. Um, It's really hard to want to know thyself. It's very easy to talk like you want to know thyself. I'll give you an example from this morning and the last couple of days. So I put out a video a couple weeks ago on a redefinition of kindness. I made the argument that kindness means accommodation. That's how most people use it. And when someone says be kind, what they mostly mean is accommodate me. And I said, I can't buy that as some kind of universal principle that I want to live by. I do not want to accommodate everyone. That won't work. So, yeah, there is a little bit of that, Rev Walt. At least I am actually, now I won't go off on that tangent right now. Maybe I'll get to it later. I said that kindness for me means remembering that I'm the same kind as the people I accommodate and don't accommodate. That is, if I'm trying to knock someone off their high horse or just fight for my fair share of turf within what our structure is, well, our rules or whatever, like if someone is trespassing by my standards, whatever, I don't want to fall for this urge to, if they're wrong, I'm perfect. What I call exempt by contempt. So if I'm angry at someone for getting on their high horse, I don't want to get on a high horse against it. Hello. Nice to have you back, Crowley. Um, so so I have this friend who works full time in what's called the bridging community. The bridging community is people who are trying to bring together left wing and right wing and get them to listen to each other. And it's a little ironic with this person because because I'll tell you the story. So she writes back and says, "Yeah, nice video. Of course, I disagree about your definition of kindness, the general popular definition of kindness as accommodating other people." And, I said, "Well, okay, tell me what your alternative definition is, because 'Cause I'll go with anybody's definition, I just wanna be consistent in it. So I'm hereby declaring that by my definition, kindness can't mean accommodate, but it can mean never forgetting that you are the same kind as someone else. So if you pull someone off a high horse, you don't try to climb mount the steed instead." And she says, "No, I don't agree that kindness means accommodation." And so I say, "Okay, well, give me your definition." Um, and it took her a few weeks to even be willing she felt confronted by what I said and went to that. She went to, "You're being unkind to me because you're asking me for this definition." Well, you said to me, you disagreed with my definition. I'm asking that. Um, And then yesterday, she told me what her definition was, and she said, "Well, it's a feeling thing. I don't wanna get black and white about it," she said proudly. "It's a feeling thing and it's subjective." So this morning I said, "Okay, well, in that case, would you say that you don't have a definition for it? And it's fine if you don't want to answer these questions. I'm not trying to put you on the spot. These are questions, they're not, to me, they're not personal questions. And if you can't feel comfortable, um, with the sense that you haven't answered a question, you'll do something that I wrote up this morning as, it'd trigger me to admit I'm triggered by your question, so I'll pretend to answer openly while deflecting it. It would trigger me to admit I'm triggered by your question, so I'll pretend to answer it openly while deflecting it." I was inspired by our exchange this morning because I said, "Would you agree that that is not really much of a definition? It's just a feeling thing." And I said, "This is my point. If everybody goes around using kindness as a subjective feeling, but they go around and say that was unkind or something like that, we'll get nowhere. The bridging goes nowhere." So um, so yeah, I am fussy over definitions of such things. And in a way, Plato, Socrates was too, just to tie it into what you said before. And Terry and I are too. There is this about Plato, Socrates, and Sherman Deacon. And I just happened to read something also about Aristotle, Plato this way. And the game I'm playing that makes me seem weird to people. Aristotle studied with Plato for 21 years and then felt perfectly free to disagree with him. He understood what Plato was saying and he felt free to disagree. Um, and that's impressive to me. That's a hard thing to get across in regular society. We're too easily offended by questions because if someone questions my assumptions, they're forcing me to look at my assumptions. And I could end up feeling a dose of Fomo-sapio-phobia, which is fear of missing out on being smart, um, fear of my humanness. Um, I know that feeling. I'm guessing you do too. A question that you have, you felt like you answered and someone comes up and challenges it, that can't feel good. It's not gonna feel it's not I mean, I know I do have some friends who say, "Oh, no, I'm open-minded. I love when people challenge me." Mm, yeah, and in a way, I say that too here, but I would not say that without admitting that, no, I also don't like to be challenged on my ideas. I don't think anybody does. Like I've been saying lately, um, don't get me wrong, I'm egotistical and vain. I'm just not egotistical and vain enough to deny that I am egotistical and vain. So yeah, no, I don't think anybody likes to hear that the foundation of their assumptions are being questioned. The question is, can you tolerate that degree of introspection? Someone is forcing you to rethink some habit of thought or behavior. And I think the biggest problem is we tend to say, well, that's unkind. So I think this is an era in which I call this a touchy 2020s. And I think it's an era in which we really have to be sensitive to people. You can trigger someone, it's all hair trigger these days. I mean, doesn't matter what tribe you're part of, what lifestyle brand you're living in, it's hair trigger because people are on their edge. They're barely keeping up and they can feel it. And you say you're not keeping up, and boy, that will make them bristle. So we have to be especially accommodating of each other. And we have to be way up in each other's faces. We have to challenge each other's assumptions. It's just a basic assumption I have about intimacy. We're being crowded together more. Our decisions are affecting each other more. So that means we have to be really careful to be accommodating of each other. And we have to really be careful to call people on shit. And so more and more of my effort is going back to where I was last year, and not because it was popular last year. I did this whole series, How to Roll Trolls and Dump Trumpists, and that was my most popular series ever. It was before the election. People were really trying to figure it out. Hey, Fun Monster, good to see you here. Um, and No, because actually of something Fun Monster said at a Sunday meeting last week. It's actually because of that that I am turning my attention back to this question, which is we're talking about. I was saying, yeah, that the people where I live um, lost the ability to fight or never even gained it because we didn't want to get punched in the nose and because we lived in a peaceful, safe, and civilized area, Northern California, and so there wasn't much fighting to deal with. And Fun Monster, who was in the meeting and lived in LA and in a different culture than mine, said, no, down here, there's tons of fighting. And I realized, yeah, I really gotta stop promoting fight as an option and really get around to focusing on how to fight effectively. And that doesn't mean how to fight politely. It's a different thing. I'm talking about verbal combat here. And it immediately so which Fun Monster is said that she's got a name, but that's what she's going by here. Um, uh, it reminded me of what I do when I go see my grandkids who are 8 and 5. Um, we have an ongoing trope, which is, I hope you guys are still fighting because you need practice. You suck at fighting, I tell them. Um, and I want to see you guys get good at fighting. And the way you get good at fighting is fighting like blind mole rats. I don't say it in those words, but you just it's this kind of whole thing that they do. That's how you figure out what doesn't work. The question then is, okay, what can you take from that? Because in general, when people do that kind of flailing, my son has a gesture like this. I like this one. It's like this. Um, uh, this is the father of those kids. People do that flailing. It's futile. People come away and say fighting doesn't work. That's not the right takeaway. The right takeaway is I got to learn how to fight better. That means wit. It means ruthlessness. It means confusing people. It means being generous and gentle, being surprisingly generous and gentle, changing the subject, whatever. Um, And last night, a thought that was on my mind related to this, it includes sarcasm, the entire toolkit. And and that's one of the places I have trouble with Yeah, with lots of people. It came up this week several times. I said to someone, for 30 years, I've been trying to get across a message that no one, and that is, I'm just astonished by how hard it is to get across. Every move in the human repertoire has its place. Hate has its place. Sarcasm, snarkiness, what all these, and every positive term, every positive move has its non-place. Kindness, love. Be careful where you point that shit. It's not the tool. The tool's not intrinsically good or bad. It depends what you use it for. And if you're not paying attention to that and you're just going around saying, well, that's kind and therefore it's good, or that's unkind and therefore it's bad, you're completely missing it. I am amazed by how hard that message is to get across. I would guess one of the reasons why is that one of the best tools in our toolkit is going around talking like you're the fucking Pope, and that you know which moves are always good and which moves are always bad. It's so cheap and so easy and so effective. Sarcasm kills. In I mean it in the other direction. That is, if sarcasm is effective, people will say it's good when I do it and it's bad when you do it. And that's exactly what we've got with the Trumpists. They do they are only paying attention to whether a word sounds good or sounds bad. And if it sounds good robotically, they pretend it's all about them times infinity. And if it sounds bad, it's all about us. And the whole goal of the whole thing is to look like you are absolutely dominant all the time. Like you win every time. I realized this last night, or at least it was a reflection that came to me, which is I've been talking about them as pretending they're always right, righteous, and mighty. And I realized last night that, or my thought last night was, nah, mighty is all. They don't actually, they are above all. This came from watching something about about Stalin or someone like that. You just can't look like you lose any, period. And you can be as nasty, immoral, stupid, silly, hypocritical, out of touch, whatever, as long as you look like you have a permanent winning streak. And then this morning, I'm thinking about that in terms of this concept that's been interesting to me for a while, which is the more intensely you feel something, the more real you think it is, which is just it's a bizarre feature of human uh, nature, you could say, is that if I'm feeling strong feelings, like I've fallen in love, or I've just taken a drug, or I just got what felt like a breakthrough in an evangelical church, or whatever. Um, when the feelings are intense, that's actually a sign that I am at my most biased by emotions. Emotions are really convincing. But the impression I've got about myself when I'm in that state is that I am finally seeing reality itself. So revelation, for the most part, is associated. The idea that the truth is revealed to you, for example, on LSD, it's tied to this sense of that you get an emotional wallop. Well, emotional wallops are exactly what throw us off. Okay, so then what do you get when you cross someone who can portray gut level conviction nonstop? Let's say a Trump, and an audience that wants to feel like they're always winning. Well, you get this short circuit where whatever feels like it's winning is winning. And that's how civilization will end, because these people claim to be more realistic than everybody else, and they are checking out of reality completely. Um, can you so Rev Walt raises an interesting question. I might have missed some other things too as I wax poetic here. Sorry, let me see what we got. Trump is a businessman. Positive. Let's see. But is he a good businessman? In a way, he is. So this is an interesting question. Is he an evil genius? Is he a douchebag? I have a Silicon Valley friend I've mentioned more than once who says that he would hire him to be the CEO of his company. I doubt it. I doubt he really would. But on the other hand, I can sort of see why he would. And the reason why is that it's what they call the bigger fool theory in economics, but he is good at selling himself as good, and that means that someone can buy him thinking that they'll be able to sell him to someone else who's a bigger fool. So when you look at the stock index on True Social, it went way down, but these days it's up, and his Bitcoin, his crypto coin has earned him $3 billion since the election. Anyway, let's see. I am always right. I can prove I am. I can even prove I am wrong. Something like that came up for me this week. It was someone unpacking. This was in. I was reading something in medieval philosophy, and it was an unpacking of the liar's paradox that I thought was just charming. I'm gonna look it up here because I wrote it down. I thought it was interesting. Um, uh, uh, it might have been something, nothing more than this statement. Uh, I always lie. The statement is true. Something like that. Anyway, um, the point I'm trying to make has to do with something I've called the relationship between the likely, the liked, and the likable story. So I think you'll be able to relate to this. It's not complicated. The likely story is what's really most likely to be true about reality. For example, gravity is part of the likely story or the experience of it. You'll do better in general if you, in the long run, if you pay attention to the likely story. Then there's the locally like story, what the people around you think is true, or yeah, what they believe. And then there's the likable story, what makes you feel comfortable in your skin. Um, the relationship between them is interesting. And what I'm saying is there is a tendency in us to want to say that the likable story, the story that I want to tell, is the truth. You know, one manifestation of this would be science proved I'm right all along. That kind of thing would be a standard appetite. And you get this extreme version of it in Trump, which you could say was one reason why he's a good businessman in the entertainment world, is that he gives everybody this feeling you can just go with your gut because your gut knows for sure. And then you can withstand all sorts of people laughing at you because you can even weave that into the story that yeah, my dismissal of the people who criticize me um uh proves I'm right. Anyway, it goes on and on. Let me see what I've got here. um Evangelical roots important. I always remember how amazing Christian my parents. Yeah. Azrael Crowley, this is an interesting thing. I do think that I'm I'm deeply torn about religion. I was talking the other day to a friend of mine, very poor woman in Guatemala I used to work with 40 years ago, something like that. She goes to evangelical church 4 days, 4 evenings a week with her husband. I cannot begrudge her that. Her life is really rough, and that's some of the only comfort she gets. On the other hand, I think it's totally groomed us for Trump. I think it's largely responsible, and I'm not picking on the evangelical church. I'm picking on wild card, trump card formulas. The entire generic thing where you get to say, society endorses you for liking this story because it's absolutely true. Something like that. It's like, uh, all the good people agree with my gut that we have the truth. And the evangelicals are just a highly amped version of that. And there have been one after another, after another, after another. Communism doesn't matter what they claim. It's not about claims. It's not about any that believes they claim trump all other considerations. It's not about that stuff. It's this appetite humans have, um, that I think of as an extension of what goes on for all of life. So for all of life, you could say, let the best body plan win, and I sure as fuck hope it's mine. So we are trials in a trial and error process, evolutionary process, but um, we're trials that are trying to win. That's what the struggle for existence and the competition side is. Hello, Shirley. Nice to see you here. Um, but with humans and language, we become ambiguous. We are trials in life's trial and error process, but we can also do trial and error in our heads. And so if I said in biology, it's let the best plan win, and I hope it's mine, that's just a struggle for existence. In humans, it's like, I just want the truth, but it better be affirming. I just want the truth. I only after the truth, but it better be affirming. And I swear, I've had the lucky opportunity to work with high-level academics who have spent their entire lives in philosophy or biology or something like that. Do you think they're immune? No. Even if the more notable they are, the further they could fall if they found out that the truth was not flattering. I mean, they got all sorts of commitment to the ideas that gave them affirmation. So it's a funny other paradox about us is we tend to think that those who are famous, I can understand why, would have would be smarter. But in a way, fame makes us dumb because fame makes us prickly. Because I wouldn't want to find out at the absolute top of my career that I was wrong. I wouldn't want because that would mean I'd have a lot of plummeting to do. So I just want the truth, and it better be affirming. Is kind of a thing humans are always dealing with. And to come back around to my occasional, to the title of this thing, I mean, I picked them at random because I don't know exactly what we're going to talk about. And but this thing about Fomo-sapio-phobia, I think, is kind of cute. And you could say it's even more intense at the top. Imagine if you were someone who had done quite well, very successful in, you could say, as a cultural intellectual, let's say a Jordan Peterson. And imagine, just this is strictly hypothetical, that you turn out to be a dipshit dick and get exposed for that. And you're sitting at home having plummeted from being seen as a god. Um, yeah, Roger Shoemaker, just give me some truth. I think the most interesting word there is some truth. Um, uh, I don't believe he wants the whole truth for the reason I just said. I want the whole truth, but it better be flattering. A friend of mine said to me the other day, yeah, what I love about my partnership is we can talk about everything. And I quipped to myself because I didn't want to offend this guy. He was a little sensitive about it. Yeah, you can talk about anything provided you don't. We have to be careful with each other. We have to be careful with each other and of each other is my sense of it. Okay, here we go. Yes, but the point is if we focus on what they say and the response to these, we may be able to do better. Well, Fun Monster, this came up this morning in our little exchange about the podcast. So you are interesting to me this way because you are one of the only people I know who actually has experience being among the people, kind of aligned with the people I'm trying to reach. But I don't agree with this. I don't agree that we need to focus on what's it? My point is to focus on what they say. Yes and no. I just want to be clear about this. Yes, I want to focus on what they say, but I'm busy reading between the lines because I think that once you become as um, like the trumpets is what we're talking about here. You have to focus on why they say it more. I think we lost a lot of time trying to focus on what they say. This comes up in the Sunday meetings, to which, by the way, everybody's invited here. These are free private meetings. Private meaning I won't expose your name. You don't have to worry about exposure. But this is a study group that meets every other Sunday, not this Sunday, but the Sunday after. By the way, this is the average advertising for two things. One is I am a hireable consultant at reasonable and adjustable rates. to help you think through anything strategically. If you want to run something private and particular through this filter, this mind, I'm efficient and flexible and available for that. But that's separate from that. We have the study group. Jeff Cheney's part of it. Fun Monster is. I don't know who Rev Walt really is. They, for all I know, these people are part of it. But anyway, we get together and we talk about how do you, in Fun Monster's words, maybe we'll be able to do better in getting through to these people. And my point, it's the theme throughout this thing. How do you deal with someone who's gotten all prickly? How do you deal with someone who, in effect, at their best, will say, it'd trigger me to admit I'm triggered by your question, so I'll pretend to answer it while deflecting it, and I'd add, insulting you for asking it. How do you deal with people like that? How do you engage with people there's no talking to? That's the question we deal with. And we deal with it pragmatically. And like I said earlier, we've come up with lots of interesting innovations. And at the same time, I'm not satisfied with any of them. It's the biggest problem we've ever had to deal with as human beings. So we've got to figure out a better way to take people down off their high horse because it gets really bad up there. And it's really bad for us. And I've made the burden even harder on myself in the last couple of weeks with this basic reflection. I mentioned it last time. I'll mention it again. It goes without saying, but bears repeating. Tyrannies or dictatorships or absolutist cults like the Trumpists, let's just say whatever you want to call them, they're terrible for people because they are checked out of reality. They're going by gut alone, which is why I want to expose their gut. I don't want to talk about the details they're using. They're just mouthing words to make themselves feel better. It's basically masturbation. But what I'm saying is they're terrible for people because they're out of touch with reality. Standard comment. Still, they beat people who are more in touch with reality. It's the shortcut. It's so much easier to play God than it is to be human if you can get away with it. And if you get away with playing God, we won't be here long because we're not gods. Reality is God. I hold no higher God than reality. And I could define reality for you. It's, from my perspective, it's what it contains, what reality contains will be up for debate for a long time, but it's the ever-changing, what the container itself is simply the ever-changing um, list of things that have consequences for us. It's a pragmatic definition. That to me, reality is the set of all things that will fuck you up to ignore, or will fuck you up either by if you ignore them, they'll hurt you, or if you ignore them, they'll help you. We debate what reality contains, but I hold no higher master, no higher God than reality. And the point that the hardest part of that is not even me. I don't even hold myself a higher God. That's really hard. It's so hard that I can say it, but you better keep an eye on me because the fact that I say that I hold myself beneath it, that like the God is more, that reality is more important to me. Don't take my fucking word for it. But it is where I got peace of mind about the term philosophy. Philosophy means love of wisdom. And I thought, well, no, it really should be called sophology, the study of the emergence and nature of wisdom. What is wisdom? Um, the reason it's called philosophy, I'll argue, is that you've got to love it more than you love yourself in order to pull it off. And I wouldn't trust anybody who claims they do that. I did have a conversation this week with a guy who claimed he did that. And no, I don't think he did. I think he loved himself more. Um, uh, and he's welcome to say the same about me. That all this stuff I come up with is just me jerking off to my own brilliance or something. Whatever. Anyway, it's really hard. Ego death is the way. Roger Shoemaker, here's what I want to say to you, given these various things. Okay. Yes, a public masturbation. Uh, no, ego death is not the way. Oh, wait. Please. Ego death is the way. Yes, sir. That's why I like sarcasm. Okay, yeah, no, there is no ego death. Forget it. Just forget your idea of killing your ego. That is such an egotistical bullshit move. What is ego? What we're actually talking about here is id. That is the part of me that's all about me, 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 me. It's my id, my impulses my desire to want to do anything. But we set that aside. Let's go with the popular use of the word ego. Ego death is coming for me. It's coming the day I die. At that point, my ego will be dead. But this idea that you can convince yourself you're not a self or that you can transcend ego because it's bad for you, fuck that fucking bullshit. That is such bullshit. I am done trying to transcend my ego. I am actually interested in how to exercise it safely, which means I have to recognize I've got it. Ego death has been, everybody and their brother's been out for ego death for just millennia. Lately, I've just been reading more and more of these of the old thinkers and how they're trying to figure out how to win the sweepstakes so they can get out of pain and difficulty and enjoy eternal pleasure, which would be the ultimate uh, satisfaction from ego death. You know, that is you transcend and you're just a pure soul. Everybody's trying to figure that out. That's like the main driver for all of this philosophy and theology and sort of stuff. And so I am actually arguing for the death of this ego death fantasy. I am really interested in exercise, safe escapism, strategic gullibility, optimal illusion, off jerking. My ego is a jerk. The part of me that thinks that I'm the number one top priority, that part of me, which has been in all organisms since the origins of life. They don't have the consciousness or the feeling, but when you see trees trying to outsun each other, that's what is that? That's selfish behavior because we are selves struggling for our own existence. And then you put on top of that feelings, and then you put on top of that language. Um, and then you use this move where you say, well, language enables me to reason my way to the value of killing my ego, as if language has that power that we can just decide to kill the thing that keeps us alive. No, I want to exercise it judiciously. I want to recognize that there's a part of me that really needs affirmation, really needs confirmation bias, really needs to believe that I'm exceptional. And that thing in all of us will get us all fucking killed. But it's not like I can kill it. So I want to exercise it. And I do. I think we all do. Some of us do by saying things like ego death is the way. That is public masturbation. So I just hope you get the irony of that, my brother Roger Shoemaker, who's going through exactly the same stuff I go through. This is not, I'm not calling you out. I'm calling out an idea. Um, Enlightenment is the ego's ultimate dissatisfaction. Or no, enlightenment is the ego's ultimate disappointment. Is the original phrase. I don't even know from who it comes, but I love the irony of it. Good. I think you get me. Anyway, I just want to say I still have some friends who talk like they're on a project or a campaign to transcend their ego. And I know what that's like. I lived on a commune where I'll just give you a sense of how much I steep myself in this. I lived on the world's largest hippie commune. It was 14 people in Tennessee. I played in one of its rock bands, and I wrote this fucking song for it. And I'm going to sing it. It's the most embarrassing line I've ever written in my life. And I'm going to embarrass myself by singing it too, if we can remember it. Uh, We have got to up the ante. We have got to try now, can't we? We have got to drop all our egos and deluding passions. And if we don't start soon, we will end up with no room. It'll turn out we will all wish we had thought of it sooner. We've got to drop all our egos and deluding passions. Go fuck yourself, Jeremy. If you think anybody could ever do that. Um, so I'm just saying, no, I'm done with that. Been there, done that. That campaign to just like ego death is the way. Um, yeah, it got me in some trouble, actually. I mean, physical trouble that ended up being historical trouble. I'll mention this too. This is part of my history, so why not? No, you never heard that song. That song never made it to daylight. We sang it. I sang it in a rock band when I was living in Guatemala. Um, we were like the first kind of California rock band that was ever playing down there. We were 50 people from this commune who were working down there. I was doing water projects down there, and I was really trying hard to get rid of my ego. And I even felt really guilty because I'd had such a lucky life, incredibly lucky life, and it had gotten even luckier while I was down in Guatemala. It turns out I had a knack for finding water for poor villages on the edge of survival. And I mean, I could show you pictures sometime. I'll put it up of me working down there. It was great fun. And I just I just partnered with this woman, and we were getting married and all of this stuff. And I said to her one night, as I'm going out to this really remote village where I had found water where no one else had, and I had gotten money for 8 kilometers of pipeline. I'm 24 years old at this point, and just feeling in my game and like I'd gotten this incredibly lucky start on life. And I'm now leading crews of 100 Mayan Indians digging 8 kilometers of pipeline. We're going to put in this water system, and UNICEF had given us the pipe to put in water for a village that was 3 miles from the nearest water, and where the kids were dying at a rate of 50 apiece. And if you think the story ends heroically, for me, no, it does not. It turns out terrible. Um, so the night before we go out to this village, and we had no traffic, we didn't have our own transportation. This is 1980, and Guatemala's way back. Um, I mean, for example, I remember going to get permission for the water system. We had to drive 3 hours to get permission from someone who owned the land where the water was, and that was instead of making phone calls. They didn't have a phone. 3 hours we drive. We get to the guy's place. He's not in town. We have to go back home. So anyway, we're also 2 miles from the nearest road. So we walk into this village. We got this pipe inside of a school. And the night before it, I'm talking to my wife on a phone. We had a phone at our camp, which was miles and miles away, and a phone in the city, Guatemala City. And I'm burdened by something I had heard from our spiritual teacher a couple of days before, which was adversity is the teacher of the true way. That is, the true way is ego death, and the way you learn it is by suffering. And I complained to my wife that I hadn't suffered enough. The next day, through a accident that I caused, I burned down the school. I burned up the 8 kilometers of pipe. No one else was hurt. But I spent the next 6 months in bed for having tried to um, trying to save the school. So I'm inside the school at night. The next day we're going to take all the pipe out of the school and run it down these 8 kilometers of line that we run. And I'm sitting there with the only other guy I'm with. He's a guy from Venezuela who's also part of the commune. And it's hotter than hell. And I had one of these old-fashioned stoves where you fill the tank with gas, and then you light the outside of the tank of the gas to heat up and create pressure inside of this. 1980s, and this was an earlier stove. It was efficient, but I poured gas in from a plastic container, put the can over here, lit the stove, jumped to the can, and I'm barefoot inside this building, and I lift up the can of burning gas. The bottom drops out, pours gas on me. I'm spending the next 6 months in. So the reason I tell you that confessional story, it was pivotal. Yeah, and I'm also my wife is pregnant, and she's the nurse for the commune, so she just married a guy who she's now debriding the wounds on every day. And I can't have been the best patient possible. And I was ashamed before the whole commune. They called me braver than smart to try to pick up that gas can. I'm glad no one else was hurt. the UNICEF replaced the pipe. There was it all plays out. This is 40 years ago. My point about it is that may be one of the reasons why I'm so severely averse to the sense that we could become selfless. I mean, it's not the reason. I don't make decisions like that based on an incident, but I am saying, "That's interesting." Yeah, it was quite the cosmic wedgie for me to say, "Yeah, I gotta become selfless." This was right around the time I was writing that song, where I'm saying, "Let's all drop our egos and deluding passions." I'm thinking, I'm doing too well to I'm a wimp. I won't be able to get rid of my ego because I'm not selfless enough. Um, yeah, this is a big overreaction to me saying, to this ego death is the way. You will There are other places you can go where you can enjoy that satisfaction. I did have the fun of telling Ram Dass at one point, he was a buddy, "Is there room at the top for more nobodies like you?" Because he was at the top of his game. He's the guy who came up with "Be Here Now." And, he's selling selflessness to throngs of attractive people who think that he's God. Very interesting bind, and I teased him about it, he laughed, he got it. So you're saying that if we ignore our ego, then it will eventually turn into pride goeth before the fall? Yes, I would say that is true. That is, if you try to if you try to pretend it away, it just shows up again. That's why my theme in this all of this work is recognize, manage, exercise your ego. It's why my main theme, and by the way, it really helps. This is back to Fun Monster's point. If you if you're going into battle with someone, verbal combat with someone, you've got to know what you stand for, and it better be well thought through and in your fucking bones. And this is all I stand for when I go talk to Trumpists. Self-love is important. That is, your ego exercising is important. But get a room, don't let it go to your head, zip up after, and don't turn basic infrastructure into your circle jerk vanity project. Notice I'm not paying attention to what they say. I'm not doing that. Nor am I trying to get them to be open-minded to my perspective. And I am acknowledging that they are circle jerking. And I'm calling up something here. That's why I'm going here. Um, uh, and uh, and I'm saying I do too. Here, I wrote this. This will soon to be a minor motion picture. It's super short. Um, uh, you are being kind. Well, we'd have to talk about that. Um, mm, mm, I'm being kind. Yes, Jeff, by the standard that you embraced from that short video I did a couple of weeks ago. Yes, that's the point. Self love is important. I need it too. I get a room. You get a room. Um, I try not to let it go to my head. I zip up after. It is masturbation. We need to masturbate. And even if you don't masturbate, you need to masturbate. If you're masturbating by thinking that you're somehow kind of Zen transcendent, that's masturbating. Going to church is masturbating. It's all we need it. I bless that. Okay, so here's what I wrote this week, and I'll probably turn it into something. The Earth is flat, you know. I say, I get it. You agree? I mean, me too. When I was in middle school, I was so desperate for attention that I begged my parents to let me dye my hair green. What's that got to do with the earth being flat? They said no. They said I had to learn how to earn attention without easy, cheap, stupid party tricks. Do you see what I'm saying there? You see what I'm doing? First of all, this is anybody who makes any of those statements, they don't care what they say. They care about the attention they get by dragging your nose into it. So I'm trying to pull away from that. I am not going to address their point. This is uh, to Fun Monster's point, which I don't want to. I'm paying attention to what they say, but I'm reading between the lines because I don't think they actually guy thinks the Earth is flat at all. I don't think he cares whether the Earth is flat. That's not what it's for. It's for attention. He's jerking off and he wants to use me for it. And I'm saying, yeah, I mean, I get it. I also wanted that kind of attention. Anyway, so I'm just playing with that. Okay, let's see. Best thing about infrastructure is that it pays for itself when the federal government pays for it. No tax dollars necessary, just new dollars. So, Michael, you and we should probably just have a one-on-one if you ever felt like it sometime. I mean, I have some background in economics, macroeconomics, microeconomics, because I did that master's degree in public policy. I'm not sure I am with you on your economic, microeconomic, macroeconomic formulas. They're I don't know yet. And it would be the kind of thing that we could talk about. And by now, Lord knows you've earned it because you keep on showing up. So if you want to just email me and you and I can have a conversation and we can talk about it. Um, yeah, I don't know. We'll talk. Have you read some David Graeber? That's the last stuff I read in macroeconomics and all that. I found it very enlightening and useful and all of that. Anyway, okay. Think toll bridge. Oh, how would I respond? Let's see. Let's see. What is this thing? How would I respond to what? Um, the Earth is both. Oh, how would I respond? No, I'm a little lost there. So give me just because I'm not saying not selfless, just having perspective. I'm trying. I'm trying to follow your thread, Fun Monster. I'm not sure where we are when you say how would I respond, but you could. Oh, the Earth is flat. I just gave it to you. That's how I would respond. Say, I get it. You agree? I mean, too. I mean, me too. When I was in my point about it, the subtext of that little exchange there is, yeah, I know what it's like to want to get attention by saying something that something mindless, um, the equivalent of doing your hair green. And I have no objection to doing one's hair green. I'm just saying that if that's your only way of getting attention, you're basically jerking off. I would like to see someone. I have not seen it yet, but why is there not, at least in virtual reality, a software program that enables you to imagine that you're before an adoring crowd? And it could even have AI capacity to listen to what you say and make the crowd do so. It's a virtual crowd and they're adoring. You could sing for it and they would applaud. You could tell jokes, you could voice your opinions, and the crowd would, you could even select what kind of crowd. It could be adoring people, it could be all women, it could be Trumpists, whatever. I think that would be a great piece of software to have. I don't know if people would be willing to use it, but that's kind of what someone is doing when they go out and say the earth is fat or the flat or that Trump solves everything. It would be a great VR program. And I've looked into whether you could get such a thing. Um, uh, but that's the point. Go drain the lizard. You know, there's a part of you that just wants to be a superstar on top of the stage. Um, and uh, and it'd be just great if we could offer that to people cheaply. Um, good. So, okay, I think that's on its way. Kyle, we need to work on it. Yeah, another version of something similar I thought of, and I think this did finally come out. I didn't make it, but I wanted to. It would be a meter that you would have on your phone and would look all technical, and you could do all sorts of skins on it. And you also could title what it's a meter for. For example, a hotness meter or whatever. And there would be some trick you would do with the phone so that when you held it up to things, the meter would peg. Um, and so it would be the kind of fake objectivity that everybody craves. It's like, a hotness meter or genius meter or whatever. It says, I must be right. And, I put it up right here and look, it goes off, or I put it right next to my words, or um, you're so cute. Look at this. You're off the charts, that kind of thing. Um, I think those are out there by now. But what we're talking about is fake objectivity that's clearly ironic. I came up with another one yesterday morning. Bring your ego to work day. I like that one. So Let's see what I write to what I wrote it up here. See, an annual holiday when people act out at work as a way to contrast with the general benefits of minimizing ego at workplace. I don't trust leave your ego at the door as any more than wishful thinking. Still, I found an inverse correlation between needing affirmation at work and being strategic and realistic. Ego is correlated with hope, the hope that my wishes will come true. Hope tends to undermine realism. For example, the more you hope that people will act the way you want, the less likely you are to understand how people actually behave. I believe in off jerking in fiction, exercising our egotism offline, though often offline online, e.g., imagining that you're a superhero, stud muffin goddess in video games, movie watching, porn, church, etc. Self love is essential, but get a room. Don't let it go to your head. It's okay. On Bring Your Ego to Work Day, everyone exaggerates their egotism, creating a mock ego clashing clusterfuck nightmare, a comic parody day when everyone exaggerates, parodies, and vents their opinionated. Or like another holiday I had proposed. Earlier, I had proposed a holiday called Judgment Day, when everyone exaggerates, parodies, and vents their opinionated tendencies. Um, okay. So yeah, bring your ego to work day. I think it's just a great. So yes, I seem to be interested in these comfortable mock ways to exercise one's ego. It's probably um, I mean, my fascination with celebrity roasts, with Louis C.K. style humor, um, uh, where he really plays up his egotism and has his ambivalences about it, and is calm with it. It's like he's got equanimity about his lack of equanimity. I think that stuff's interesting, um, and I think it's useful when you've heard me say this many times. I'm interested in to me, the height of intimacy is laughing at and with each other at ourselves in the human condition, all of us trapped in it. Okay, let's see. Um, okay, so Michael de Souza Cruz, you keep wanting to draw me into conversations on a topic I mostly don't cover here because I guess what I would do. So these are kind of like what would be the economic or macroeconomic schema by which life would work well? And as you've heard me say, I've gotten less interested in if I were in charge of the world type questions. I can see the advantage of them, especially when you roll up your sleeves the way David Graeber does or something. So I do read some of that, in part to try to understand what I'm fighting for. But these days, I think we're so far from being able to design such a system like that, um, that I'm paying more attention to the psychological reasons why they don't tend to work. I'm going to use a crude example of this. If you start with if you start with Marx or Lenin, and I don't pick them out, you'd be von Mises. The libertarians were doing the same thing as the communists were doing back then in the 1850s. It's a period of heightened ideology, as if you can make a science out of it and come up with the right system and then impose it. Yeah, I think psychology gets in the way of these grand designs. So I do invite a conversation. I'd love to have a conversation with you, Michael, and you could lead it and we'd see where it went. But again, this is where the strategic where visions can get in the way of understanding what we're actually dealing with human beings. Okay, let's see what we got. Charged with disregard. That's interesting. I like the rhyme of it. Modern monetary theory, that kind of stuff. Yeah, yes. But it's off topic. I deleted my comment for that reason. Yeah, I. It's just not my specialty. I mean, my specialty is trying to understand what we actually are so that we can minimize our tendency to go off the rails over and over and over the same damn way, depart in opposite directions, but always with the same kind of the problem with a lot of good ideas is that they eventually degenerate into a lot of real world messy work. And if one thinks that one has found a stable system, I get suspicious. Okay, I have a theory. People who have not had a lot of practice in fighting need some lessons on how to do this. What would you think about creating a lesson plan on this? Well, in a way, that's what I did with us. It was a 7-part series, I think, how to roll trolls and some Trumpists. In a way, that's what I'm doing all along like this. But the other question is, could I actually do a course in how to do it? For me, actually, what you need is 2 things, and it's not a course. It's not a course like this. It's the conversations we're having, mostly in the Sunday study group, which once again, I invite you guys to all come visit. It's worth a visit, and you're under no obligation. I don't take a role. I don't charge you money. I don't share your name with anybody. You can show up at the meeting and don't even show up. Don't even say any words. Just listen. But it's a conversation that's ongoing work on how you deal. And mostly we're talking about Trumpists because mostly that we're dealing with an absolutist epidemic among them, but I don't think of it that way. I'm thinking about how you would apply that stuff to liberals or conservatives or whatever, or spiritualists or people or Marxists or libertarians. That doesn't matter to me. It's basically how do you fight better, and it includes accommodating them. But basically, I'm talking about how do you deal with a conflict that you have to address, and you do it through a combination of kindness and blessing. But more than that, I go back to my grandkids. Why do kids fight so much? It drives us crazy. It's an incredible waste. Sometimes it's dangerous. I have a kid or two that has a scar from the fights they got into with their siblings. Drives the parents crazy because we're supposed to, we have these instinctual urge to protect our child. But what if we're protecting one of our children from the other child who's beating them up? I remember that vividly. That was intense. The cognitive dissonance from all of that. Why are they fighting like that? My sense is that the best we can hope for is that they're fighting like that so that they learn what doesn't work and what works, so they can gradually learn how to fight more effectively. And that's why I'm really out cruising for bruising. We have a guy in our group who keeps on bringing that up. No, I am cruising for bruising. I am out. I don't want to be in a face-to-face fist fight, and I'm a bit of a pussy about going out and actually finding Trumpists to meet off with face-to-face. For example, years ago, I thought I should just plant myself in a redneck restaurant and offer $20 to anybody who will sit down and video a conversation with me. It would be different from the kind of interviews. So that'd be a great idea. There's no reason I couldn't do it. Why do I not do it? Maybe I'm a bit of a wimp, but I'd certainly put out videos that I really should do that. It'd be great. I would set down some ground rules. I've already thought of what the ground rules were. I'm happy to do it 50-50. But uh, yeah, so anyway, I want to, yeah, having said that, having admitted to that to you guys, maybe I'll find a way to do that. I'm supposed to do that. And they get more hits than my talkie videos. But the other thing is, I'm saying you need practice. We need practice going out and arguing with people, and arguing for greater efficiency. And once again, my bridging specialist friend would think of that as how to be kind to each other, even though I don't think she's got a definition for kindness. And I'm saying, no, it's how to actually have some influence when you're talking, how to engage with people so you have some influence, the right influence, not just any influence, and not just the feeling that you've had influence, which any of us can get by speaking our truth to power. So unfortunately, I'm getting less pushback these days from Trumpists than I am from liberals who mistake me for a real MAGA guy when I do my videos. I'm so good at playing MAGA Mike, or the liberals are so bad at recognizing when I'm joking. But no, they leave satisfied that they spoke truth to power. And I'm not satisfied. When I imagine how a Trumpist would respond to any of these people who say, "Where are the Epstein files?" or "You're a hypocrite." I mean, one of the ways I framed that up this week was, let me see, I'll just call this up. Um, oh, where is it? Um, sorry, 1 second here. Um, it was uh, whew. Double standards are a tyrant status symbol. If you're still exposing them, you're not keeping up. I think that's true. So when someone comes on and says, "You're a hypocrite," and I imagine being a Trumpist, how I respond to that, it may be satisfying to say, it may be therapeutic to say, but I don't think it's effective. And I haven't made this connection before, but I realized years ago when I was doing major donations to major to national peace and law and environmental organizations and all of that. And then I stopped. I was running one. I had a nonprofit lobbying organization on environmental issues with 75 chapters around the country, and we were getting money because we're considered kind of a darling of that movement. And I realized, no, this is therapeutic. We're actually not having an effect. And I withdrew from the organization. I was the CEO of it. I withdrew from the organization. I said, I got to find better leverage than this because it's not enough for me to feel like I'm effective. I actually have to be effective. Okay, we're getting towards the wind down. Let me see if I've missed something. Please copy it from earlier and put it down below. I wonder if there were people like Jeremy in the 1933 when you knew who was coming to power, giving pointers on how to deal with what's going on down then. Limno, I'm glad you asked that question. There's one guy who's no. I mean, I'm thinking about Beinhofer, who was a theologian and was trying to fight. He was kind of a liberation theologist, was trying to fight and ultimately lost, as could be the case with anybody as mouthy as he was, or maybe as I'll get, depending. Um, but was he talking strategic? I don't think so. Then you got folks like Hannah Arendt. And so, yes, in this respect, and they are my mentors. You've got a guy like Arthur Kessler, who I adore, who's going through all of this and thinking about it. But they weren't. They were doing very important, informative work for me on trying to understand what's actually going on with these people. But in terms of strategy for how to deal with them, I'm gonna have to look into that because um, I'd love to find some precursors who were actually thinking through how do you actually talk to your Hitlerian neighbor before he rose. I don't bet there was a lot of that. It's an interesting question overall. Who's been working on that strategic question? It's one of the reasons I'm kind of hopeful. Remember, the way I'm framing it is how do you humbly humble humans who will say or do anything to avoid human humility? When I say how do you humbly humble, I also mean how do you humbly humiliate them? Humbly humiliate would be you yank them off their high horse, but you don't mount the steed instead. Um, one reason I'm hopeful that we can come up with better answers is the same reason I think the only reason I could be possibly hopeful about climate change. We have yet to begin fighting. It's we haven't even addressed the question. So the whole thing, like you say, 10 years ago, when people start to recognize that climate change, or you say 20 years ago, inconvenient truth and all of that. Well, yes, we didn't have good answers then, and we still don't, I would say, but we hadn't begun to really try to research how to come up with better answers to the climate crisis. And I'm actually going one level deeper because I actually think while the climate crisis is likely to kill us, I think assholes or absolutists or whatever you want to call them, hero bots, are the biggest problem in the world. And I don't think we've begun. I think that I'm on the early days of psychoproctology, and that this is because I'm framing the question in a very clear way to corner us with it. How do you humbly humble such people? Um, And, the deliverable is them being humbled into a degree of curiosity, of receptivity. That's a psychoproctology, right. Um, so I coined the term for it. The term psychoproctology had been around as a joke, but I meant it as a light name for a serious subject because you cannot take yourself too seriously in that work. Remember, if I were to call myself an expert on assholes, I'm putting myself in Hitler's camp. Hitler considered himself an expert on assholes. Trump considers himself an expert on assholes. It's anybody who disagrees with him. So no, I need to take myself very lightly in this extremely serious, I would argue, the serious issue in the world ever is how do you deal with this human tendency, this juggernaut, what I'm calling a symboloma, a cancer of the symbols. And by symbols, I mean language. That is, you can make up a language story that makes you feel like you've solved reality. And any challenge to it, you come up with another story on top of that. That's a symboloma. Trumpism is a symboloma. It's a language based cancer that is eating through our finite carrying capacity here. And we keep on dealing with. So that's what I'm trying to deal with. And I dedicated my book on the subject to future psychoproctologists who will do a better job than me because I think we're kind of new to the question. So I'm really glad you asked this question. Who else might have been doing that in 1933? I'm sure there were people struggling to figure it out, probably too late, which is how I feel about now. I mean, the stuff this conversation we're having right now, we're 10 fucking years late, 20 years late having it. We should have been doing this a long time ago. You got to nip these things in the bud. These guys are so far along at this point. Uh, I almost feel like I'm collecting strategies for if we ever get another chance to forestall a herobotic juggernaut. I don't know that that we'll ever get there. I don't know that we'll have that opportunity, but I do still think that this is the most important question out there. How do you engage? How do you soften people who become absolutely hard? And, that way, something like that. I don't know. Um, how do you get people to off jerk safely? It's another way of describing the same problem. It's not like how do you get them to sober up? No, it's how do you get them. It's like distracting a kid who's doing destructive play. How do you turn them towards non-destructive play? I'd have no problem at all with these guys doing exactly what they're doing, that grandstanding bullshit, if it was about sports or it was about if they were off doing it someplace other than basic infrastructure. That's my point about it. Okay, let's see what we've got. Talk it out like adults. Yeah, I keep on responding to Shoemaker because here he is. He's saying lots, and he's good at typing. I want to give him that. Yes. So the one thing you want to notice about an asshole is that they will play child or parent, but they won't meet you adult to adult. So they are either the prudish, scolding parent figure tutoring you on the ways of the world, like you don't know anything and they know everything. That's a high horse move. Or they're the petulant brat who's been victimized and oppressed and is now having their revenge and all of that. And they will leap between those two positions effortlessly because they don't really care. It's the freedom from consistency that they are reveling in. The freedom into the consistency of I am always winning, because as long as you can keep on changing the rules so that they serve you, yeah, of course you always win. That's exactly like shooting the arrow anywhere and then painting a target around that. They get to do that all the time, and that's the joy they're having. So, yeah, hard to get them to talk adult to adult. Um, let's see what we got here. Trumpism now changing the meaning of words. Good. I want to pick up on this, and this may be the last thing we do here. See, response to No Kings gives me hope. Yes, I agree. I agree with that, Jeff. And I run on, you could say ambient hope, but I don't. I mean, I can tell upside and downside stories about what's likely to happen with these things. These guys have been really good at swallowing anything we come up with. But I want to get back to changing the meaning of words, um, because that's kind of where we started. So, I had this concept that I think we're in trouble because we treat words that describe human moves as if they are intrinsically good or bad. So, an example would be mean sounds bad and kind sounds good. And early on, like 35 years ago, my first interest in all of this was how we change the meaning of words. Um, uh, Changing the meaning of so you say Trumpists know that changing the meaning of words wins power. Yes, and I want to unpack that just for so that we can know how they're changing the meaning of words, and this would apply to anybody, including anti-Trumpists. Anybody can do this. Um, Loaded, load-bearing, loosely defined last words. That's what I'm talking about when I have a word like kindness. So it sounds good. It's so that it's loaded positive. And let's take another word like woke. It's loaded negative for those guys. So let's to focus on them. They got this word patriot. And they got this word woke. So patriot is hella good, and then woke is hella bad. So this is a simple deductive move. I want to feel good. Hope. Let's see. Patriot sounds good. Therefore, I am patriot. I don't want to sound bad. Woke sounds bad. Therefore, I am not woke. These are just the simplest deductions. That's all you have to do at that point. Okay. Now, so that's how it becomes load bearing. Was that your identity rests on being pro patriotism and anti woke. Okay. So you're now resting on this term. And what you don't want is to have a clear definition of it, because then you'd have to check to see whether you actually are woke or not, or are patriotic or not. Instead, you want to shut it down. So what you end up is people who are just using words by smell. If it smells good, it's about me. If it smells bad, it's about you. So it's not that they're changing the meaning of the words, they're branding. It's actually very much like what goes on in branding, and I get that from linguists. I don't get that from marketing people. A linguist recognizes that that brands are a certain kind of thing. They are they are private. What is it? They are what do you call it? Proper nouns. Um, and so they are assigned to something. It refers to an entity. So Coca-Cola refers to an entity. And once you take a word like Christian. So there is a brand, lifestyle brand called Christian, and it's associated with good. And there are 45,000 different Christian sects. And about the only thing they agree about is that they're hella good. So at that point, the only reference is to who's got it. And the entire game of Trumpism or any kind of absolutism is this branding. If you disagree with me, it doesn't matter what you disagree about, doesn't matter what you're arguing for. If you disagree with me, you're woke. If you agree with me, you're patriotic. Something like that. So if we get really clear on the game they're playing, it makes it much easier to figure out what to do with it. And darling, I am totally fine with anybody going out and doing exactly that about sports. You know, the Oakland A's are the shit. I don't know anything about spectator sports, so I'm going to blow this. The New York Jets are evil. That's where you do it. Get a room. Do it there. Just don't do it in public as if the stuff is, as if you're the joy, the liberation into this degree of hypocrisy where you won't bother to identify what the word means, as if that is how you want to decide what to do in reality. It's really dangerous. It's dooming. I am going to draw a parallel, I think, between now and the next meeting, between what I just described and what I've described. I think I'm just going to stretch, but I think there's a relationship between that sequence I just did from from loaded to load bearing to loosely defined to last words. I think it relates to this thing I came up with years ago about the book of love in 5 chapters. I'm gonna have to work it out. It's a little bit Procrustean what I'm gonna do right here, but let me try this out. The Book of Love in 5 chapters, and then we're gonna end. Um, uh, Character affirmation. No, character aspiration. I hope to be affirmed by someone attractive. Character affirmation. Someone comes along and affirms me. Character assignation. I assign that person authority over my worth. Character assassination. They start to see that I got warts and all. Character extrication. How do I get my identity out from under it? So I think I'm gonna be able to make a connection between that and that whole thing about the loaded, load bearing. So loaded is I want to feel good about myself. I find a word that's loaded that makes me feel good. I assign to that word the authority to identify me. And I avoid the move where I actually figure out whether the word applies to me, like whether really I am a patriot or whether I'm actually just another woke, broke joke. Um, and I hope that it lasts for happily ever after. And there is going to be an interesting question I thought we were going to be dealing with earlier, which is how do you help these guys extricate themselves from Trumpism when it goes bad? It could be any day now. I hope it is. This week, he's up 1.5 points in the polls. What is he right now? Let me just tell you because it happens to be open here. Um, uh, no, it seems to be holding. Let me see. He's negative 6.9. Is that right? Yeah, he was, but this week he was down 9.2. Last week he was down 9.2. So I don't know when it's going to happen, but it hasn't happened yet that people feel like, someone said to me this week, there's going to come a time when admitting that you were Trumpist, it's going to be as bad as, let's say, admitting you were communist or something like that. Anyway, my friends. All right, I want you to remember this. You've got, you can email me if you want to join the study group. It's not meeting tomorrow, it's meeting the week after next. No obligation. You can get in touch with me if you want to run anything by me. The first half hour is free for one-on-one consulting. And yeah, yeah, I'm a certain kind of mind you could apply to something you're struggling with, and I could use the work. Frankly, I don't have as many clients. I have some very enthusiastic clients, but I'm not good at rainmaking. Okay, all right. Let's see. Okay, good. And I hope you come back, Roger Shoemaker. We could take up next time with I flipped a few. Actually, you should join our study group, Roger Shoemaker, and explain to us what you did, because that's what we're trying to do in the group. Is we're trying to get good examples of how we found some receptivity in them. And if you've got something, by all means, you've got to share it with us. Okay. May everybody enjoy their self-rightness and self-wrongness this week. I wish you happy off jerking. Um, it's a new blessing. When I was in Guatemala, they had a great one. They had a great one because we were living in the highlands and it was very slippery and everybody's walking around in sandals in the dirt. Makatakta, which means don't fall down. Makatakta, which is how they say don't fall down, was their way of saying I'll see you. Makatakta. Okay, we're gonna turn that into something official here. Happy off jerking and makatakta. See you guys next time.